Upon landing, the passenger dismissed the flight crew's request to honor a fallen soldier, declaring loudly, "I couldn't care less about it." He was unaware that the person behind him would swiftly make him regret saying such a thing. The plane had barely touched down when passengers began stirring, eager to disembark. Despite repeated announcements, most ignored the crew's pleas to remain seated. A tall, rugged man in his late 40s pushed his way to the front, his impatience palpable. "Move," he snapped at the flight attendant blocking his path. She stood her ground. "Sir, you have to wait. We need to let the fallen soldier be escorted off first." The man glared, weighing whether to argue. Behind him, other passengers crowded the aisle, the somber reason for the delay lost in their haste to leave. "Ladies and gentlemen," a flight attendant's voice cut through the noise, "please remain seated. We have a fallen airman on board. We ask for your respect as he's escorted off the aircraft." The words fell on deaf ears. As two solemn-faced military officers approached the door, chaos erupted. Passengers surged forward, the rugged man at the forefront. Again, the flight attendant intercepted him. "You have to wait, sir," she repeated firmly. Irritation flashed across his face. He'd already clashed with her earlier, and his patience had worn thin. Glancing around at the crowd pressing against him, he hissed, "I couldn't care less, honestly." His words drew disapproving looks, but he remained oblivious, fixated on exiting. Little did he know, this moment would lead to an encounter that would change his life forever. Summer 2017. A commercial flight to Detroit carried a solemn cargo, the body of Sergeant Andre Taylor, a 28-year-old airman from Lansing, Michigan. As passengers settled in, the pilot's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to be transporting the remains of Sergeant Andre Taylor, who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. We ask for your respect and silence during this flight." Sergeant Taylor had served 10 years in the U.S. Air Force, stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. His family, mother, siblings, and young children Adriana and Aiden, had said their goodbyes amid the mournful notes of taps. Now they were one step closer to laying Andre to rest. While most passengers absorbed the gravity of the situation, Mr. Johnson in seat 17C scoffed. "What's the big deal?" he muttered. "Other people have their own problems." Martha, a petite flight attendant, caught his words. A flicker of disgust crossed her face before she composed herself, approaching with a practiced smile. "Sir, please switch off your phone and buckle up." Johnson grumbled but complied, catching Martha's subtle disapproval. He settled in for the 4-hour flight, unaware that his attitude would soon lead to an unexpected confrontation. As the plane took off, carrying its mix of mourners and the indifferent, the stage was set for a journey that would challenge perceptions and perhaps change lives. Throughout the flight, the pilot's voice periodically echoed through the intercom, reiterating his request to honor the fallen sergeant. "Upon landing, please remain seated until Sergeant Taylor's body is respectfully removed from the aircraft," he announced. Flight attendants repeated this message, their eyes scanning the cabin with solemn determination. Amidst this atmosphere, Mr. Johnson grew increasingly irritated by the constant reminders. Martha, the attentive flight attendant, noticed his discomfort and approached with a warm smile. "Is everything all right, sir?" Johnson wasted no time voicing his displeasure. "Why the constant reminders? It seems excessive and unnecessary." Martha fought to maintain her composure. "Sir, we have many passengers who may not be paying attention," she explained, gesturing towards those engrossed in magazines, movies, or their phones. "We're trying to create a respectful atmosphere for Sergeant Taylor's family." Her words seemed to have little effect. Johnson scoffed. "Nobody's going to suddenly start dancing or cheering. It's a long trip. We can't keep hearing this over and over." Martha's smile faltered as she took a deep breath, carefully considering her response. When she spoke again, her voice was polite but firm, preparing to address Johnson's insensitivity without compromising her professionalism. "I understand your frustration, sir," Martha replied, "but it's basic courtesy and protocol. Please help maintain a respectful atmosphere for the remainder of the flight." Mr. Johnson reluctantly agreed, though the exchange left him irritated. As the flight neared its end, the crew repeated their reminder 4 times, especially when the mood became restless. Upon landing, Martha stood her ground, blocking Mr. Johnson's path. She was acutely aware that she was breaking protocol to keep him in check, but felt it necessary given his earlier behavior. "You have to wait, sir," she insisted firmly. "I couldn't care less, honestly," Johnson snapped, his words drawing disapproving glances from nearby passengers. Martha felt her resolve weakening as other impatient travelers crowded behind Johnson. Realizing she was fighting a losing battle, she reluctantly stepped aside, fearing that continuing to block their path might worsen the situation. Johnson smirked, relishing Martha's apparent defeat. However, he was oblivious to the fact that his insensitive remarks had caught the attention of someone else, Ken Fitzgerald, a retired airman seated behind him. Fitzgerald, who also worked as airline staff, understood the sanctity of this moment for the fallen soldier and his family. He had been quietly following the directive to remain respectful, but was shocked by the discourteous behavior of his fellow passengers. His eyes remained fixed on Johnson, his mind racing with thoughts of how to address this blatant disrespect. As the situation unfolded, Fitzgerald found himself torn between maintaining decorum and confronting Johnson's callousness, setting the stage for an unexpected confrontation. An elderly woman near Johnson spoke up, her gray hair a testament to her years. "Sir, please show some respect," she urged. Johnson shrugged off her words, turning back to the flight attendant. Fitzgerald, watching this exchange, felt his patience wearing thin. As Johnson moved to exit, Fitzgerald called out, "Excuse me, sir, but you can't act like that." Johnson glanced over his shoulder, then blatantly ignored him, stepping off the plane without a word. Fitzgerald was stunned by the disregard shown not just by Johnson, but by the other passengers disembarking while Sergeant Taylor's family wept over the casket. Anger and disappointment burned within him. He decided to take action, not for revenge, but to educate and prevent such disrespect in the future. Once home, Fitzgerald shared his experience online. In a Facebook post, he expressed his deep disappointment, recounting how flight attendants' pleas were ignored. He described one attendant urging departing passengers, "If you don't have the courtesy to stay seated, at least stop laughing as you walk down the aisle." In a follow-up video, Fitzgerald revealed that only he, a flight attendant, an off-duty pilot, all flying as passengers, and the Delta Airlines flight crew remained seated until Sergeant Taylor's coffin was loaded into a hearse. His posts aimed to shine a light on the importance of respect and decorum in such solemn situations, hoping to inspire better behavior from future travelers. "I couldn't believe what I was seeing," Fitzgerald recounted, his voice tinged with bitterness. "The flight attendant behind me and I wondered if we'd somehow misheard the crew's instructions." While appalled, Fitzgerald acknowledged that some passengers might have been unaware of the situation's gravity. After a 4-hour flight, some needed to stretch or had valid reasons to disembark quickly. He cited a woman with arthritis as an understandable example. There could have been many reasons, connecting flights, medical issues, or personal matters, Fitzgerald mused. Some might have thought it was okay to leave after the military escorts departed. But does that excuse the lack of courtesy? He recognized that not everyone was familiar with the formalities of honoring fallen soldiers. However, the blatant disregard for the repeated announcements was hard to justify. Fitzgerald contrasted this incident with a similar situation 4 years prior, when passengers on an Atlanta-Los Angeles Delta flight showed utmost respect for a deceased U.S. Army soldier and his family. Some even became emotional during the journey. This stark difference made the behavior on the Phoenix-Detroit flight even more disappointing. Concluding his posts, Fitzgerald emphasized his goal of educating those unaware of proper customs and courtesies. He shared his videos across multiple platforms, including military affairs websites. Within minutes, they went viral, catching the attention of news media outlets and bloggers who echoed his concerns about the lack of respect and civility at airports. As the story spread, it sparked a broader conversation about societal values and the importance of honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. The video's impact reached beyond social media, catching the attention of Mr. Johnson's employer. After reviewing eyewitness accounts and evidence of his behavior, the company took swift action. They revoked Johnson's frequent flyer privileges and demoted his employee status pending a comprehensive review. Additionally, they mandated his attendance at sensitivity training and a course on respecting military personnel and their families. Failure to comply would result in a 6-month suspension or permanent termination. This information, while not public, reached the flight crew, including Fitzgerald and Martha. They felt relieved knowing Johnson would face consequences for his actions. Despite the initial outrage, a silver lining emerged. Sergeant Taylor's family received overwhelming support from sympathetic individuals. "I was saddened by the disrespect shown that day," Tiffany Dobson, the fallen soldier's sister, told Fitzgerald. "But now I'm overwhelmed by the love and support my brother and family have received. It has really helped us through this hard time." The incident sparked an outpouring of emotions honoring Sergeant Taylor, turning a moment of disrespect into a wave of support. This story offers several lessons. 1. Always respect the deceased, regardless of personal circumstances. 2. Honor fallen soldiers who've made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. 3. Refrain from making insensitive remarks about veterans in public, as consequences can be severe. Mr. Johnson learned these lessons the hard way. Was the punishment too harsh or not enough? What are your thoughts on Fitzgerald's message about airplane etiquette? We learn every day, and through this event, we hope you've gained valuable insights. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.